Hello, let's get started with our first video. I am going to show you guys how to get a Sophos firewall set up, just a basic initial configuration and just get it online. I'm using EventG for doing majority of these lab videos that you're going to see in the future. It's a great platform, shout out to them. I'm by no means sponsored by them or anything, but it works really well. So yeah, let's get our Sophos deployed. So we're just going to pull out the image here and get it started up. When you first bring it onto the mat, you just start her up, and then she will boot. And once we get it booted, we'll connect to it and get the initial configuration going. All right, so we are now fully up and ready to go. Default password on these things out of the box is always admin. So what I'm going to do is bring in a bridged cloud so we can get some access to this thing remotely. Normally on these things, port 1 will be your LAN connection, port 2 will be your WAN. Those can of course be changed later. We're gonna just assign an IP to our LAN interface so we can get to the web console. We're not gonna worry about the WAN right now. As always, HTTPS and then the IP address of your LAN interface, followed by port 4444. If everything worked out well, you should be able to get to the interface. You're always going to get this unless you install a specific certificate, but it's all good. Let's just continue on. Accept the agreement. Of course, to change it to something strong. You can skip this because we already are on the latest firmware. This goes without saying, this is a lab environment, but this setup screen and walkthrough is identical on a physical device. It can also be used if you're setting up Sophos Home. So normally you would have a WAN cable plugged in and you'd be getting some configuration here, or you could set your static depending on what your ISP is providing you. Just going to give you a little warning. You can give it a name on the physical devices. It'll have the serial number of the device up there. We're just going to call this Lab XG. Set your time zone. I'm in Manitoba, so we're going to set ours for Winnipeg. It's already pulled the right time and date anyways, so we're just going to stick with the trial. So this, we're going to turn off DHCP for now. Of course, you can set DHCP, give it whatever address you want. Change your LAN IP address now if you want to as well. This is where we can set our different modes. Bridge mode, if you want to maybe put it in place to give it a test before you replace your current firewall. Of course, this is being the only firewall on the environment right now, so we're going to keep it in firewall route mode. We'll continue on. These will add a kind of predefined settings to your initial default firewall rules. I usually leave these off. You're more than welcome to click them on if you feel like it. So this is going to ask you for an email. You can set an encryption password for your backups. It'll send you a weekly backup. I'm just going to use a non-existent email right now. That should be an @ symbol. Just to get through that screen. So everything is good to go. Now we're going to finish up. It's going to reboot and apply the initial settings. I will come back once that's done. All right, we are back. So the firewall took, I'd say about 3 minutes or so to come back online. So username is admin, your password that you created at the start. And we'll get you in here. So now it's going to ask us to register. You can either put in an existing serial number, for instance, if you have the home license, which you can, of course, obtain through here. It'll bring you to the thing. You sign up. You can start a trial. I can't use that on this image for some reason. It seems to lock it up. You can migrate a license from their older Unified Threat Management platform. But we're just going to skip and continue on. Gives you a little warning there that, hey, you should register this device. You won't have all the features. But for our basic lab here, it does its job. This is something new in the new 18 series. I don't remember exactly what firmware version they brought this in, but this is like the one-all be-all storage master key. It'll allow you to use it for, you need it to restore your backups. You need it to do a lot of things. And one thing I don't like about it is it can't be changed, and if you lose it, you're kind of hooped. So be careful with that. Make sure you store it in a secure place. Either it's some kind of password management system, somewhere where you know you're going to be able to get it if you need it. You can't, like it says, until you create this master key, scheduled backups will run, but you won't benefit from the extra protection. You also cannot restore a backup if you've already set one of these master keys. So that's something to be aware of. Sophos Central is another product from Sophos that allows you to, they have endpoint protection, email gateway protection, all different kinds of stuff. You can manage your APs on there. It's a nice cloud management platform. You can also manage your XG firewalls through there. For now, we're just going to click no thanks. So this is kind of your main dashboard. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I may do some more videos down the line going over a few more things with Sophos. This is kind of your control center. You can click on certain things and it'll show you what's happening. Right now we have no interfaces, so we're not going to see a whole lot here. How much memory and CPU is being used, and network activity, and such and such. So the whole meat and potatoes here, of course, is your firewall rules and policies. Out of the box, you'll have some default rules. This one right here, very basic, not very secure. Basically, from your LAN zone, so port 1 to any host, or from any host to WAN, port 2, any host, any service. Just kind of a wide open rule. There's no intrusion prevention, no antivirus, no web access, firewall, no app protection, like nothing set out of the box. That's what those 3 checkboxes you saw back in the beginning, that's what you can do with those. So let's go ahead back to our Eve and let's connect our WAN link. So this is just a NATed box that we're going to connect. It's going to give me an IP address and allow me to get out to the internet. This one is our bridge connection, which allows me to access this from my local laptop. You can, of course, bring in like a virtual PC here and access it that way, which is something I'll do in later videos as well. Probably going to continue off of this and build out a bit of a topology here with some servers and maybe a managed switch and some VLANs. And we'll get a little deeper as time goes. So that we've connected that, we can move over to our network tab. And as you can see, we have now pulled just some random NATed IP address from DHCP, so we should be connected to the internet. And a good way to test that is we can open up the console. Connecting to the console this way is quite slow, especially if you're doing it remotely, so not recommended. If you want, you can always open SSH or something like that later in the device access tab. I'll show you that in a little bit, but let's just go to our shell and we'll quickly make sure we can ping the internet. And there you go. We are out. We are out and we are good to go. So let's get out of here. Make sure you don't add that dash there. Okay, so now that we've got some internet connection, one thing I always like to do too is come in here, just label these things like LAN. It helps a lot later down the line, especially when you're creating rules, so you know what zone is what and what source you're coming out of. You may have multiple LAN connections with different subnets, different networks. You may have multiple WANs, so you might want to name it, you might want to take your WAN and name it, we're in Canada, so you might want to name it Shaw or Rogers or Telus. Like for me, I'm just going to leave it at WAN. A little nicer than saying port B or port A. You can also name your gateway. I should have done that, but we'll just continue on. There's multiple versions of hardware for these. As you get to the bigger ones, stuff like this loads quite a bit faster. Just bear in mind, I'm doing this in a lab environment, so it's not going to be as snappy as the real deal. Okay, so now that we've got our DHCP, we've got our WAN, we've got our LAN, we can go ahead and just make sure all our patterns are updated. This is where your things like your access point firmwares, your antivirus, all that kind of stuff is up to date. So as you can see, it's slowly downloading. GeoBlock database, intrusion prevention systems and application signatures, Sophos Connect, which is their VPN. We've got Red firmware. Red is a remote access device or remote endpoint device that you would put maybe say at a branch office, and it will tunnel everything back to your main headquarters, head office firewall, and give you kind of a remote connection. Very similar to a site-to-site VPN. Sophos antivirus, of course, is built into the firewall. So if you don't have any endpoint protection, this will add some layer of that. It's of course not going to be as good as the real deal, but so yeah, everything looks to be good. So let's head on over to the administration. So this is where your licensing would show up. Right now we're not registered, so it's not going to have any licensing. Device access. Always make sure you're turning all these accesses off on the WAN. If you for some reason need access, one thing I like to do is create just an ACL that say remote access. Then you can put your WAN on. I personally would set this to your country or even to your management IP, just for that remote source, access. Could be your public IP at your house or your office where you're going to be doing this. But for us, let's just do a demonstration. We'll set it to Canada only. If I can find it. Destination. Again, you could set this to just the public IP of this device, so you're not you're locking things down. Say do you need web admin access, maybe SSH. Turn on ping. Another good one is user portal. I personally don't like to leave that exposed to the whole world, but you may have a user that's say in Ontario or Toronto or the US or you're in the US and you have an employee in Canada. You can kind of define this a little nicer here and make sure you set this to accept and you click save. So now they won't be turned on for everywhere. They'll just be turned on for those specific regions, IPs, users, whatever you want to set. You can come here to change your default admin password. Public key authentication. It's a little deeper than I'm probably going to go, but yeah, of course you can add, keys and make things even more secure. Here's where you can change your host name. Give it a description. So say this is your headquarters XG Firewall. We can apply that change. It's going to update your host name, which didn't change. Here's where we can add, if we have our own certificates, we can upload that. For right now, you're using the appliance certificate. So every time you log into this thing, it's going to be that cert error saying it's unsafe. Basically just click pass in advance. You can change some certain settings here for where you're redirecting users to interactive pages. It can either be the IP, you can have it use this, you can set a host name. A few things I like to do, definitely put some logout admin after so many seconds, minutes, whatever it may be. For the block login, default for us is usually 3 minutes. 3 unsuccessful attempts in 30 seconds, and then block that access for a good 60 minutes. That way, if someone is trying to brute force your firewall, it's going to take them a long time to even get anywhere near getting in here, especially if you have a strong password. With the later versions of firmware, they've kind of enabled this by default. This was never on by default, but it makes you set a complex password with minimum length of characters. Of course, you can adjust to how you see fit. And then same thing for users now as well. You can make them have a specific strong password. You can, of course, set a disclaimer. So to do that, we got to go to our administration, and then this is where we can set our message. Okay, this is a private system, so that's good. Keep that as it is. We'll enable that. So now if we were to, for instance, log out of here, we'll now see that message that we are accepting this. You could put terms and services for your organization, whatever you feel is comfortable here. And then, of course, it's going to ask us to register. So until you register, this is going to pop up every time you sign in that firewall. But really, that's the basics to get started and get you a good little secure initial setup going. And then, from here, we'll start going in and delving down. Another quick thing I like to do, just delete these auto-added rules. They're all basically garbage. You're going to want to start defining your own setup. And then that rules as well. You can just get rid of this default. This rule right here does the exact same thing, so why have more confusion? Could kind of show you. There's the intrusion prevention tab. There's tons of default defined policies. You can add your own signatures, DOS and spoof protection. We may go over this. You got to be careful with this. You can lock yourself out of your firewall quite quickly. But yeah, definitely something to think about. These firewalls are quite powerful. They have a lot of options. Web policies, tons of predefined lists. Will block things for you. You can go in here and set things up. One thing I will show too. Some of these exceptions we've seen where things like QuickBooks, Microsoft Office, things just don't work. So there's some specific exceptions to add. Something else I'll probably go over yet in some future videos. HTTPS decryption, malware content scanning. You can change this to dual engine. It will definitely slow the thing down. They actually have a Vera for their secondary antivirus in here. So one thing I like to do is I will come into system services, go to our malware protection, and if we're using Sophos on our endpoints, we'll change this to a Vera just so that we have kind of an extra layer of protection. Maybe they have a separate set of signatures. You might catch some you won't just by having Sophos on both sides. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that, and I will see you guys again. Thank you.